welcome to Working Dragon Mystic. I'm Drake. Today we'd like to talk about how to start working with Fae. This is a question I got recently, and I wanted to cover on some quick basics, especially with midsummer coming up, which is a great time to begin working with the Fae. First off, what are Fae? Fae have a lot of definitions across many belief systems. Perhaps the Norse and Celtic myths have the more popular names of them. And I mean, you can search online and find many things. You'll find generally they're broke up into two major categories, though, and that's the light Fae and the dark Fae. Some refer to them as summer and winter, and that's primarily because these two types of Fae each have their own ruling body. Most often you hear about the Fae Queens, though there is also a Fae King in both court, and you do see this in Wicca a lot, where you hear about the Holly King and the Oak King, and how at the solstice, the Holly King and the Oak King switch out places of power, and this also represents when those two groups of Fae switch out. That being said, the question is, how do you begin to work with these entities? Well, Fae, first and foremost, they're magical nature spirits. So your focus is going to be on nature. Now, if you live in a city, don't worry. That doesn't mean that you're out of luck. Because when we say nature, we're looking at what is the land spirits. And even if you're in a metropolitan city like New York, you're still on land. And the Fae have adapted just the same as we have over time. Which is another good point, because a lot of people ask if you don't live in those European countries if you can work with the Fae. The Fae are not limited to the continental barriers and travel. Just like any other magical entity, they can travel wherever they want pretty easily. And because of that, you can find any kind of Fae just about anywhere. You just got to do a little looking, and every place has its own land spirits and Fae with it. And that's what we're going to be touching on here, is how to begin working with those. Because so many cultures have so many different names, it makes it really hard to know where to approach them. So I'm going to go over some simple basics to get you started that I use and I teach my students. So first off, what you want to do is, let's talk about the light and the dark, or summer and winter. Well, the light Fae or the summer Fae, they tend to rule from the winter solstice until the summer solstice, which is when the year is growing light. The darkness is being pushed back and the light is growing up to midsummer, which is the longest day of the year. And the dark Fae rule the other half of the year from midsummer to Yule, when the light's being pushed back up until the darkest night, the longest night of the year, which is actually the winter solstice. That's how the two categories work. Now, that does not mean you can only work with these Fae at those times. You can find all types of Fae all times a year. It's just, I guess, the best way to explain it in human terms is that's who's politically active at the time, because their skill set, their focus is far more beneficial to the natural order and the natural cycle at those times. It's pretty much that simple. And if you are going to work with the Fae, do try to do some research into the natural energy cycles. Again, this ties in heavily with the wheel of the year. So even if you're not really, into a religion when you're working with your magic, you should research the wheel of the year. I highly recommend it. I myself, I actually keep a wheel of the year here in the house, so that we can turn that as the year goes on to remind us exactly where we are at. In fact, this is what it actually looks like. It's not showing up on camera. It's a little hard to see. But on each of these is one of the equinoxes and the solstices. And you can just hang it in whatever direction, and whatever's up is the current area we're in, which midsummer is right here. So that's when it's on my wall right over there. That's the one that's facing up right now. And if you would like one of these, I'll try and put a link below for you. I've had some trouble finding this exact one, but I will try and find a link to something like it. And if I find this one, I'll make sure it's there. But I will say that one I did actually paint. And maybe I'll do a craft video to show how I got that pewtery, stony look. Because they usually come in a bronze or gold, and I'm just not fond of it. Doesn't really go with my home decor. So we painted it. Anyways, so understanding those natural energy patterns that flow throughout the season and the cycle of the seasons is very, very important when you're working with the Fae and understanding them. The second big one, real big, is Fae are very hospitality based, old world manners and customs. So they get offended real easily. So definitely do some research on hospitality and manners. What's it mean to be a good host, and what's it mean to be a good guest? Because if you welcome them to your house, you are, as a host, expected to treat them in certain ways. You know, like make sure they have good foods, good drink, that their area is kept clean, those kinds of things. If you're visiting them, they're supposed to be a good host, but you're also supposed to be a good guest, which means you shouldn't be doing anything offensive or destroying anything of theirs or causing trouble. And those are things that, again, you kind of have to learn by working with these entities. And that's what we're going to get into. But do look up rules of hospitality. And that'll give you a good basis. If you just follow those rules, generally speaking, you should be okay. And use a little common sense and just try to be nice. So, that said, we did mention the Queens of the Fae, and I don't want to overlook them. There's so many different names. Some people even, the Morgan, which is also a goddess, they think the Queen of the Fae or a Queen of the Fae. But the names bounce around so often that it gets really hard. So for this video, I'm going to use the two names that get used the most that I have found in my research. Now for the Light Fae or the Summer Fae, that is Tatiana. Tatiana, I think I'm saying that right. If I'm mispronouncing it, I apologize. And the Dark Fae is Mab. I think everybody's heard that name in the old Arthurian legends and everything. But yeah, the Dark Fae or the Winter Fae is Mab. And these names are so popular, they do show up in literature, not just myths. And actually the first time I heard the name Tatiana was actually in a literary fictional work. So I was a bit surprised to find out that it actually was indeed, might be a little too close to that today, actually was indeed used in the old myths to represent the Queen of the Light Fae or the Summer Fae. So anytime I see something in fiction, I get iffy on it. But I am noticing a lot of writers are doing more and more actual research and using real factual data to create their stories around. And I'm loving that kind of writing. I hope more authors do it and keep it up, because that makes those stories that much more intriguing and draws you in a little better in my mind. But so the next thing you want to do once you look into the cycles of the seasons and everything, and you understand especially just what half of the year you're in, is you want to do a dedication, a simple offering type thing. And you can set up a altar outside or inside your home. That's totally up to you. Both work. Though if you do set it up in your home, make sure you keep it clean. Absolutely. But if you set it up outside, you need to keep it clean too. I've seen a lot of people who set up a Fae altar outside and they don't trim the grass around it or anything, and it turns into a mess. And not keeping the area clean and not maintaining it outside, this can upset the Fae. You're not being a good host. So make sure you do maintain these. But all you need to do is actually place a basic gift or offering for the wee folk or the land spirits. And typical offerings are drink and food. These are the things they really love. They love to make merry. And a lot of people do alcohol, heavy cream. You can find a lot of offerings are common are cookies, sugar, honey, candy, anything. That said, though, people overlook the fact that sometimes the best offering is the very thing that you have. So let's say you're having a big dinner, you're making dinner for the family, you're doing something special, and one of the things we do around here that we really get and we love when we do it is we make a big pot of gumbo. Well, I will actually take and offer out some of that gumbo that we put the time and work into to the Fae, because that's what you would do with a guest. You've got this dinner, you share what you have. I also homebrew, so I make my own mead and things. So I will make offerings of that to them too. They really seem to love that. But there's times when all I have is a can of store-bought beer. No problem. They take that as they love that as well. Or water. I do a lot of camping and I'm outdoors a lot, and we are hoping to do a bit more of outdoor magic and outdoor activities and whatnot on this channel. But when I go camping, I generally only have water with me, and I will offer that water to the land spirits where I'm at. Because what you're doing is you're reaching out and you're building a relationship with these land spirits. They don't know you initially, and just like anyone, you have to reach out and, talk to them, get to know them. And that's what this is. And after the offering, just give the offering and say, this is for you. And ask them to let you know they're around. Tell them you mean no harm. Let them know that you would actually like to befriend them. And take some time and listen and meditate and pay attention to the sounds you hear, the energy you feel. You may hear like a little bell or buzzing noise that's seemingly from nowhere. You may hear a giggling. But this is those Fae and those land spirits coming to the offering and responding to you. Now, as this happens, you can start to look and see if any of them make themselves known to you. And this is important. If they're not making themselves known to you, and you should ask, will you make yourself known to me so I can see you? Because it's actually offensive to go looking for them if they're hiding. That's one of the ways you can offend them. And if they do, now you can start to have a conversation with that individual Fae. And that's how you would begin to build that relationship. You would get to know each other. You would, whatever name they give you. I often wonder if Fae are like some of the other entities. I'm not sure they give everybody the same name. And honestly, the way names work, I really don't blame them. So, whatever name they give you, you take it, and don't share it unless they give you permission. That's kind of my rule of thumb. Unless I have permission to share the name of an entity, I do not. This process over and over will help you to meet and learn to work with all the different Fae in your area, and make a lot of friends and allies with them. I really encourage this on your own personal property and home where you spend your time, because it's great to have the land itself as your ally and the spirits that keep that land as your ally. Any mage or magician would be lucky to have allies like this. So this is actually a great practice for anyone, not just people who are specifically wanting to work with the Fae. Another option is you can actually do a ritual offerings to the king and queen of the Fae, if you wish, and try and get their blessing and get their attention. Some people say this is harder. Some people have luck almost immediately. Really, that's just something you'd have to try. The rules are generally the same. Treat them with respect, as they are a king and queen, and it's debated whether they're gods and goddesses or not, but your safe point would probably be to approach them with the same respect that you would one of the entities that you might refer to as a god and goddess, if you practice in such a way. And even if you work like me, where I'm not really religious, I still approach gods and goddesses with great respect. So that's how I would also approach these entities as well. And that's a great way to build that relationship up. And then you can actually go through them to meet other Fae in your area. They can direct you to them. Another thing you may want to do is actually go out to places where nature or energy is concentrated, or there's just something special about the area to you. I think one of the most common things that people try to look for is what's called a fairy circle, which most commonly it's usually mushrooms that grow into a circle. Fae, they say Fae gather there, which in my experience they do tend to gather there greatly. You can also find just like natural circles in the grass. Tends to have the same effect, so looking for something like that. And then there's places in nature that were created to restore. Where I live, there's a place called Mount Trashmore, and this was actually once a landfill that was turned into a park, and it is a gorgeous park, and nature's retaking that, and that kind of restoration work. The Fae love it, and so if you're in the area here where I live, one of the great ways to go find the Fae is to go up to Mount Trashmore, as weird as that may sound. Of course, we're also near a beach. Plenty of Fae love the water and the beach, so there's that. And we got mountains and woods. Plenty of it. Now, I would like to cover the city, because everyone talks about nature, woods, trees, forest, and we tend to forget about modern life. The Fae are everywhere. Concrete is a mixture of water and earth. It's that simple. So those energies are in there. And most cities you will find plants and trees somewhere. There's air everywhere. And there are actually many Fae that actually do enjoy modern technologies. The big kicker with Fae and modern life is iron. They're not real keen on iron at all. They do seem to be repulsed by it, repelled. I don't know if it just burns them, like in many legends say. I don't know if they can't touch it fully. I've never tested this because I want to work with them. I want to have a good relationship with them. But that does seem to be an issue. But that's really the only material they seem to have an issue with in modern society. And it has to be a direct contact with it. So, like steel rebar under concrete won't affect them. They can walk right over that, no problem, because they're not directly touching it. So it's actually very possible for them to get around in the modern world with no problems. And they do enjoy it. They enjoy the art and the culture the same way we do. They love art, beauty, creativity, all these things that we love, they love. and they're big foodies. Obviously, the big gifts that you're going to give them is going to be food. So you can find Fae just about anywhere. It's just a matter of trying to look for them. So if you are in a city, you can do this. You may have to do it in your apartment because not all apartments have a balcony or a deck, but that's okay. Use your apartment, that's fine. If there's a place in your city where you can go, like we have our Mount Trashmore over here. New York City has Central Park, though don't do that at night. That's probably not the safest idea. Make sure you're doing it during the day. But go to these spots that still have that are nature refuges and work there as well. But if all you can do is set up a altar in your apartment, do that. That's all you have to do. I know one friend I have that does actually live in New York. He doesn't have a lot of space or anything, but he has a it's just a little chair. Looks like you'd put a doll in it. And it sits in his living room, catty-cornered, so it faces into the living room. And if a small child was to sit in that chair, they would be totally part of every conversation and activity in that room. That chair functions as where he works with the Fae. He leaves any gifts and offerings under the chair, so that if you're sitting in the chair, you could reach down and grab your beer or your beverage and your sandwich, whatever. And that chair is for the Fae. When they're visiting, they can sit right there and be part of the family. And that's all it took for him. Some people do a little table. Some people will do like a little floating shelf, which we'll talk more about those when I talk about altars in their home. But that's what he uses, and it works really, really well. And I found it funny because the Fae tend to help you out. They will actually help you clean your house or whatnot, as a gift back to you for your friendship. There are house Fae. I want to say it's the brownies. They bind to a family or a house, and they tend to look after the house. But offending them can cause them to also mess the house up. So remember that. But he was telling me he forgot to clean his house. It was a wreck. And there were a few things that he wasn't sure how somebody would react to him, and he had a date that night. And he remembered this right as he was unlocking the door. And when he opened the door, his house had been cleaned. The stuff had been put away in its proper place. So everything went off without a hitch. And as soon as his guest left, he made sure to give an offering to the Fae and thank them for helping him. And that's what I'm talking about, that friendship. They were there. They had his back. He made a mistake. They covered him. And it's the little things like this that really add up over time and also make for great experiences in your magical path. So whether you're in the city or out in nature, these are entities you can work with very easily. And, learn those rules of hospitality. Treat them with respect. Basic, simple gifts and thanks. And honestly, just approach them like you would anyone else when you're out in public and you want to get to know them. Say hi, and just like you're trying to make a friend with anyone else. And if they ask you for help on something, do so. I actually had a Fae that was having some issues with, it was a type of crabgrass that they was wanting rid of. And I don't really care too much about my yard. I'm just kind of a mow it and go kind of guy. But since they were having an issue with this, I did go ahead and fix that for them. It took a little work. Yes, I had to get out. I had to get the crabgrass out by the roots and all that. But hey, they're there for me. I should be there for them. It's a two-way street. Remember that. So if they ask you, be willing to help them in what ways you can. They generally don't tend to ask you for something that you can't, though they are tricksy and they do like to play jokes. So they may ask you for something outlandish just to see the look on your face. And if it's something that's completely outside your wheelhouse or against your ethics, you politely refuse and let them know why. And let them know that it is against your ethics and that's not who you are. And the Fae being who they are and highly driven by their nature, they will understand that as well. So it's all about that understanding and respect. But with this simple overview, you can go ahead and get out there and start working with Fae. You don't need to set up an altar. If all you can do is find a place on your counter and tell them this is for you and set it there overnight, or a place in your yard where you can set it down. Doesn't matter. That's all you have to do. If you're out on a walk and you happen to have a chocolate bar, you're more than welcome to break a piece of that off and give it to them right there and just say, that's for you. So it's as simple as that. Just give it a try and apply it. And if you do want to give them a more permanent spot in your house and put up an altar, whether it's a small table, a shelf, or a small chair, do so. I think you'll find that this is a wonderful practice. It's very rewarding, and you'll learn a lot from it, and you'll make some great friends and allies in the process. Anyways, I hope this has been helpful. I do a full class on working with the Fae. We're going to try and get that one put up on the school as well. Again, we are launching a full online school soon. We're hoping within next month and a half to have it launched with at least 2 classes at launch. So keep an eye out for that. And if you have any suggestions of topics you'd like to hear about, let us know. If you like the video, please share it with friends. Feel free to share it on Facebook, social media, wherever. Also, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified anytime we have a new video or idea. Do please leave a comment below. We answer any questions we can. You can join us on Facebook or Twitter. We actually are doing both of those. And I do respond when I'm asked a question. So feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer every question that comes my way. That's exactly how this video was inspired to begin with. Thank you for joining us. I'm Drake, and this has been Working Dragon Mystic. I'll see you next time. Bye.